The wind screamed across the frozen wasteland like a dying animal. Daniel Reed pulled his coat tighter and squinted through the white blur that had swallowed everything around him. He had made this supply run 100 times before, but this storm came out of nowhere. The weather satellites said clear skies. They were wrong. His transport vehicle sat 3 miles behind him, buried in snow too deep to move. The emergency beacon was active, but rescue would not come until the storm passed. That'd be days. Daniel knew the rules of Frostheim. The ice moon did not forgive mistakes. The cave entrance appeared like a dark mouth in the white chaos. Daniel stumbled toward it, his legs burning from the effort of pushing through snow that reached his knees. Inside, the wind still howled, but at least the snow stopped hitting his face. He activated his headlamp and looked around. The cave stretched deeper than his light could reach. Ice formations hung from the ceiling like crystal teeth. Daniel moved further inside, away from the entrance where wind still whipped through. His breath came out in clouds. Even inside, the temperature was brutal. He found a wider chamber about 50 meters in and dropped his emergency pack. His hands shook as he pulled out the thermal blanket. The storm outside sounded like thunder now. Daniel checked his comm device. No signal. He was alone. Then he heard it. A sound so faint he almost missed it. A whimper. Soft and weak. Daniel froze. There should not be anything alive in these caves. Frostheim had no native animals. The mining colony was the only settlement, and no one came out this far except for supply runs. The sound came again. Definitely a whimper. Almost like a cry. Daniel grabbed his headlamp and moved toward the sound. The cave narrowed into a tunnel. He had a duct to fit through. The whimpering grew louder. It sounded desperate. The tunnel opened into another chamber. Daniel swept his light across the space and stopped breathing. Two small creatures huddled against the far wall. They were no bigger than house cats, with scales that shimmered red and gray in his light. Their eyes were closed. Their bodies trembled. Dragons. Baby dragons. Daniel had seen pictures of Dravik in the colony database. Everyone knew about them. They were fierce hunters from volcanic worlds. Their adults could breathe fire hot enough to melt steel. They ruled entire star systems through strength and honor. These babies looked nothing like the warriors in the files. They looked fragile, dying. Daniel took a step back. Every instinct told him to leave. Adult Dravik were dangerous. These babies might have parents nearby. Getting involved was stupid. But the red one made a sound that broke his heart. A tiny chirp, weak and fading. Daniel cursed under his breath. He moved closer and knelt down. The babies did not move. Their scales, which should have been bright and warm, looked dull, almost gray. He touched the red one carefully. Its skin was cold. Dragons should never be cold. They were freezing to death. Daniel looked around the chamber. No adult dragons. No signs of a nest. These babies were alone. Abandoned or lost, it did not matter. They would be dead within hours. That he should leave them. It was not his problem. He had his own survival to worry about. The gray one opened its eyes. Just a crack. It looked at Daniel with an expression he recognized. Fear, pain, pleading. Daniel made a decision he knew would change everything. That he took off his thermal jacket, leaving only his thin inner layer. The cold bit into him immediately. He wrapped the jacket around both babies and lifted them carefully. They were heavier than he expected, their scales rough against his hands. The red one chirped again, a little stronger this time. Daniel carried them back to the main chamber where his supplies waited. He set them down gently and pulled out his emergency thermal unit. It was designed to heat a small space for one person for maybe 2 days. He cranked it to maximum and positioned the babies next to it. Then he sat next to them and opened his jacket. Without thinking too much about how crazy this was, he pulled both babies against his chest and wrapped his arms around them. His body heat combined with the thermal unit might keep them alive. The babies pressed against him. Slowly, very slowly, he felt their bodies warm up. The trembling eased. The red one nuzzled against his shirt. The gray one made a soft, rumbling sound. Daniel looked down at the 2 creatures in his arms. Dravik hatchlings. On an ice moon. It made no sense. Their species came from heat and fire. This frozen world should have killed them the moment they hatched. Someone must have brought them here. Left them or lost them. Daniel thought about the reports from 2 weeks ago. A Dravik ship had been detected near Frostheim. It left suddenly after sending a distress signal. No one knew why. These babies must have been on that ship. Somehow, they ended up here. Alone. The red one opened its eyes fully now. They were bright gold, like molten metal. It looked at Daniel and made a questioning sound. The gray one watched him too, its eyes a deeper amber color. Daniel realized he was stroking their scales without thinking. Like they were pets. Like they were not members of one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Outside, the storm raged. Inside the cave, Daniel sat with 2 baby dragons pressed against his chest. He had enough supplies for maybe 3 days if he rationed carefully. The babies would need food. He had no idea what dragons ate. This was insane. Completely insane. But when the red one closed its eyes and relaxed against him, making a contented sound, Daniel smiled. He would figure it out. One problem at a time. First, keep them warm. Keep them alive. Everything else could wait. The storm would pass eventually. When it did, Daniel would have to decide what to do with his unexpected companions. But for now, in this frozen cave on a hostile moon, a human and 2 baby dragons survived together. The red one's scales began to glow faintly. Just a soft light, barely visible. The gray one's scales did the same. Daniel had read about this. It meant they felt safe. Against all logic, Daniel felt something shift in his chest. These creatures trusted him, needed him, that he was not going to let them down. 3 hours passed in the cave, and the storm showed no signs of stopping. Daniel watched the 2 baby dragons sleep against his chest. Their breathing had steadied. The trembling stopped. But they were still too cold, and he knew it, but he needed to give them names. Calling them the red one and the gray one felt wrong somehow. The red dragon had scales that caught the light from his thermal unit and glowed like embers. Ruby, he decided. Simple and fitting. The gray dragon's scales were darker, almost black in some places. Like coal from old Earth. Coal. That worked. Ruby stirred first. She lifted her head and looked around the cave with curious eyes. Her nostrils flared. She was searching for something. Food, probably. Daniel opened his emergency pack and pulled out a protein bar. He broke off a small piece and held it near Ruby's mouth. She sniffed it, then turned her head away. Not interested, he tried dried fruit. Same reaction. The synthesized meat paste got a disgusted snort that would have been funny under different circumstances. Cole woke up and watched Daniel with careful eyes. The gray dragon seemed more cautious than his sister. When Daniel offered him the protein bar, Cole sniffed it longer. Then he took a tiny nibble. Within seconds, Cole made a gagging sound and spit it out. Daniel sighed. Of course dragons would not eat human food. But what did they eat? He thought about everything he knew about Dravik. They came from volcanic worlds. They breathed fire. Their bodies processed heat and minerals. That was it. Minerals. Daniel looked at his equipment belt. He had tools made from various metals. A multi-tool with titanium components. Copper wiring from his repair kit. A small container of mineral supplements he took for bone health and low gravity. He opened the mineral container and poured a few tablets into his palm. Ruby's head shot up immediately. Her nostrils flared wide. She made an excited chirping sound. Daniel held his palm out flat. Ruby moved forward quickly and licked up the tablets. She chewed them with obvious pleasure, her eyes closing in satisfaction. Cole watched his sister, then looked at Daniel expectantly. Daniel poured more tablets. Cole ate them more slowly, but with the same satisfied expression. Within minutes, both babies looked more energetic. Their scales brightened. Ruby climbed onto Daniel's lap and tried to climb higher toward his shoulder. Cole stayed close but kept watching everything around them. Daniel felt something strange happening. These dragons were not just animals seeking warmth and food. They were looking at him like he was important, like he mattered to them. Ruby reached his shoulder and settled there, wrapping her tail around his neck for balance. The wait was awkward but not painful. She chirped directly into his ear. "Yeah, I hear you," Daniel said quietly. "I know you're still hungry." He looked at his multi-tool. The blade was made from treated steel with trace minerals. Could they eat metal? Daniel broke off a small piece of copper wire and heated it with his plasma lighter until it glowed. Then he let it cool slightly and offered it to Cole. The gray dragon sniffed it and then bit down. The wire crunched between his teeth like a biscuit. Cole's eyes widened with pleasure. Ruby launched herself off Daniel's shoulder toward the wire. Daniel quickly heated another piece for her. Both dragons ate the copper like it was candy. Daniel heated pieces of different metals from his kit. The dragons had preferences. They loved copper and titanium. The steel was acceptable. They refused aluminum completely. As they ate, Daniel talked to them. He had no idea if they understood language, but it felt natural. "I know this is not much," he said. "When the storm stops, we will get you real food. Whatever dragons are supposed to eat." Ruby responded with a musical trill. Cole rumbled deep in his chest. The hours crawled by. Daniel rationed his own food and water. He gave the dragons every piece of metal he could spare. They ate until their bellies were round, then curled up against him again. The thermal unit's battery was draining faster than expected. Daniel turned it down to conserve power. Immediately, the temperature in the cave dropped. Ruby and Cole pressed closer to him. Their bodies were warmer now than before, but still not enough. Daniel wrapped his arms around them and shared his body heat that he thought about his life before this moment. 3 years on Frostheim, running supply routes, and avoiding people. He came here to escape. After his career fell apart on Earth, after his family stopped calling, he wanted isolation. He wanted to be alone. Now he sat in a frozen cave holding 2 baby dragons, and he felt more connected than he had in years. Ruby made a sound in her sleep. A happy sound. Her scales glowed softly, just like before. Cole's scales began glowing too. Daniel remembered reading about this. Dravik hatchlings glowed when they felt safe. When they bonded. The word stuck in his mind. "Are you bonding with me?" he whispered to the sleeping dragons. "Is that what this is?" Neither dragon answered, but their glow grew brighter. Outside, the wind finally began to quiet. The storm was weakening. By morning, Daniel might be able to contact the colony. Rescue would come. Then what? He could not keep 2 Dravik hatchlings. The colony administrators would never allow it. The Galactic Council had rules about endangered species. Ruby and Cole would be taken away, sent to a Dravik world, given to their own kind. That was the right thing, the logical thing. But when Ruby shifted in her sleep and her small claws gripped his shirt, Daniel felt his chest tighten. When Cole opened one eye to check that Daniel was still there, then closed it again in trust, Daniel knew the truth. He did not want to give them up. 3 days ago, he was a lonely cargo hauler who cared about nothing. Now, he was a man holding 2 baby dragons who trusted him completely. The storm outside faded to silence. The first crisis was over, but Daniel knew the real challenge was just beginning. Dawn broke over Frostheim with pale blue light. Daniel stood at the cave entrance and watched the sky clear. His transport's emergency beacon was finally transmitting again. Rescue would come within hours. Ruby and Cole stayed close to his legs. They were bigger than yesterday. Not much, but enough to notice. Ruby now reached his knee. Cole was slightly smaller, but his wings had grown. Both dragons watched the frozen landscape with wide eyes. Daniel had hidden them inside his jacket for the flight back. They stayed quiet, sensing his tension. The rescue pilot asked no questions. She just seemed relieved to find him alive. The colony came into view. Rows of prefabricated buildings surrounded by ice walls. Home for 300 miners and support staff. Daniel had a small private room in the worker quarters. No one bothered him there. That was about to change. He went directly to his room, moving quickly through the corridors. A few people called greetings. He nodded but did not stop. Ruby squirmed inside his jacket. Cole poked his head out once, and Daniel gently pushed him back down. Inside his room, Daniel finally breathed. He released the dragons. They tumbled out onto his bed and immediately began exploring. Ruby jumped to his desk. Cole investigated the small bathroom. Daniel had 4 walls, a bed, a desk, a bathroom, and a storage locker. Not much space for 2 growing dragons. He pulled out every mineral supplement he owned. The dragons ate them all. Then they stared at him expectantly. Still hungry, Daniel checked his personal fabricator. It could create basic items from raw materials. He programmed it to produce metal shavings mixed with mineral compounds. The machine hummed and produced a bowl of metallic granules. Ruby and Cole devoured it that a knock at his door made Daniel freeze. The dragons looked up, suddenly alert. "Daniel? You in there?" The voice belonged to Ben Cross, the young technician who lived 2 doors down. "Yeah, just resting," Daniel called back. "Heard you got caught in that storm. Scary stuff. You need anything?" "No, I am fine. Thanks." Silence. Then Ben said, "What was that noise?" Daniel looked down. Ruby was scratching at the metal floor, making a scraping sound. Cole had jumped onto the desk and knocked over a cup. "Just unpacking." "Go away, Ben." Another pause. "Okay. Weird, but okay." Footsteps retreated. Daniel exhaled. This would not work. The dragons could not stay quiet. They were babies. They made noise. They needed space. They needed more food than his fabricator could produce. 1 week passed. The longest week of Daniel's life. Ruby and Cole grew every single day. Ruby was now the size of a large dog. Cole was close behind. Their scales hardened. Their wings stretched wider. They started making small flames when excited. Daniel spent every credit he had on raw materials for the fabricator. He created metal compounds constantly. The dragons ate everything. They were never full. Ben knocked on his door every day. Daniel made excuses. He was sick. He was busy. He was sleeping. Ben stopped believing him. On the 8th day, Daniel returned from his shift to find Ben sitting outside his door. "We need to talk," Ben said. "Not now." "Yeah, now. People are asking questions. They hear noises from your room. Scratching. Something that sounds like growling. What are you hiding?" Daniel tried to push past. Ben blocked him. From inside the room came a loud crash. Then Ruby's distinctive trill. Ben's eyes went wide. "What was that?" "Nothing." "That was not nothing." "Daniel, what is in your room?" Another crash. Cole's deeper rumble joined Ruby's sounds. Daniel made a decision. He opened the door. Ben looked inside and went pale. Ruby stood on the bed, her scales gleaming red. Cole perched on the desk, his wings spread wide. Both dragons stared at Ben with intelligent eyes. "Those are dragons," Ben whispered. "Dravik hatchlings." "Yes." "In your room." "Baby Dravik." "In your room." "I found them in the cave during the storm. They were dying. I could not leave them." Ben stepped inside slowly. The dragons watched him but did not move. "Daniel, this is insane. Dravik are protected. There are laws. The colony administrator will lose her mind." "I know. You have to report this." "I know. They're getting big. How are you feeding them?" Daniel showed him the fabricator running constantly. The pile of empty mineral containers. The scratch marks on the walls where the dragons played. Ben ran his hands through his hair. Okay. This is bad, but I can help. My clearance lets me access the industrial fabricators. We can make more food. Better quality. Why would you help?" Ben looked at Ruby and Cole. The dragons had relaxed. Ruby was cleaning her scales. Cole was watching a data screen with fascination. "Because you save them. Because that matters. And because if anyone else finds out before you're ready, they will take the dragons away and probably throw you in detention." For 2 more days, Ben helped. He smuggled materials. He covered for Daniel. They managed. Then Helen Ortiz came knocking. The colony administrator stood outside Daniel's door with 2 security officers. Her face was stern. "Daniel Reed, open this door. Now." Daniel looked at Ruby and Cole. They sensed danger and moved close to him. Ruby growled softly. Cole's scales started to glow with heat. He could lie. He could refuse. But this would only get worse. Daniel opened the door. Helen looked past him and saw the dragons. Her expression went from stern to shocked to angry in 3 seconds. "Explain." "Right now." Daniel told her everything. The cave. The storm. The bonding. Helen listened without interrupting. The security officers kept their hands on their stun weapons. When Daniel finished, Helen was quiet for a long moment. "You understand what you have done? These are Dravik. Their species has treaties with the Galactic Council. This could create a diplomatic incident." "I understand. Those hatchlings belong with their own kind." Ruby pressed against Daniel's leg. Cole moved to his other side. Both dragons stared at Helen with protective intensity. They bonded with me, Daniel said quietly. Helen saw it. The way the dragons positioned themselves. The way they watched Daniel. The way they would not leave his side. She closed her eyes. I need to contact the Galactic Council. This is beyond my authority. Until they respond, you and these dragons do not leave this room. Understood, Daniel nodded. Helen turned to leave, then stopped. For what it is worth, what you did in that cave was brave. Stupid but brave. The door closed. Daniel sat on his bed. Ruby and Cole climbed up next to him. The waiting began. 3 days felt like 3 years. Daniel stayed in his room with Ruby and Cole. The dragons grew restless. They needed space to move. They needed to fly. But the room was too small, and the door stayed locked from the outside. Ben brought food. Real food now. The colony fabricators produced high-grade mineral compounds. Ruby and Cole ate constantly. They were the size of ponies now. The room was getting crowded. On the 3rd night, Helen returned. She looked tired. The Galactic Council is sending a ship. They will be here tomorrow. They're bringing specialists. What kind of specialists? Xenobiologists. And a Dravik representative. Daniel's stomach dropped. A Dravik? Her name is Shara. She is some kind of scholar. She wants to see the hatchlings. See you. After Helen left, Daniel could not sleep. A real Dravik was coming. An adult. What if she wanted to take Ruby and Cole? What if she was angry? Ruby sensed his worry. She rested her head on his chest. Cole curled against his side. Their presence helped, but not enough. Morning came too fast. Helen arrived with Ben and 2 guards. They're here. The delegation wants to meet in the main conference room. Bring the dragons. Daniel stood. Ruby and Cole followed him into the corridor. Miners stopped and stared. Word had spread. Everyone knew about the human with baby dragons. The conference room was the largest space in the colony. It barely fit everyone. 2 humans in council uniforms stood near the window. They looked official and cold. Next to them stood a Dravik. Shara was 7 feet tall. Her scales were deep green with gold edges. Her eyes were amber, sharp and intelligent. She wore minimal clothing, just bands of metal across her chest and arms. Her wings were folded against her back. She looked at Ruby and Cole, then at Daniel. Her expression was unreadable. You're Daniel Reed, she said. Her voice was deep but clear. Yes. You found these hatchlings in an ice cave. Yes. Shara moved closer. Ruby and Cole pressed against Daniel's legs. The adult dragon knelt down, bringing herself to their level. She spoke in a language of clicks and rumbles. The hatchlings responded with similar sounds. The conversation lasted several minutes. Daniel could not understand any of it. Finally, Shara stood and faced him. They say you saved them, kept them warm, fed them, protected them. I did what anyone would do. No, you did what almost no one would do. Dravik hatchlings require intense heat, specific minerals, constant care. They should have died on this ice world. You kept them alive with limited resources and no knowledge of our species. One of the council officials stepped forward. We need to examine the bond. Document it. This is unprecedented. Shara gave the official a sharp look. This is not a research opportunity. This is about hatchlings and their chosen guardian. They're what? Daniel asked. Shara turned back to him. In Dravik culture, hatchlings imprint on their caretaker, the one who keeps them alive. We call this person the Flamekeeper. It is a sacred bond. Once formed, it cannot be broken without severe harm to the hatchlings. Are you saying they imprinted on me? I am saying you are their Flamekeeper, their parent by our laws. The council officials exchanged looks. That is impossible. He is human. They are Dravik. Cross-species parental bonding is not documented. Shara's scales rippled with annoyance. Then document it now. Look at them. Everyone looked. Ruby and Cole had not moved from Daniel's side. They watched Shara with respect, but they stayed with Daniel. When he shifted his weight, they shifted too. Perfectly synchronized point, one of the officials pulled out a scanner. We would like to take them to our research facility. Study the bond. Learn how it formed. No, Daniel said. This is not a request. This is a matter of galactic scientific importance. I said no. Shara smiled. It showed a lot of teeth. The Flamekeeper has spoken. You will respect his decision. The Council has authority over endangered species situations, and Dravic cultural law has authority over imprinted hatchlings. My clan leaders are already aware of this situation. They are very interested in the human who saved Dravic young. The officials looked uncomfortable. Dravic clans held significant power in the galaxy. Offending them was not wise. Helen spoke up. What happens now? Shara looked at Daniel. That depends on the Flamekeeper. He has a choice. He can surrender the hatchlings to Dravic care. They will be raised by our people. He can return to his normal life. And the other choice, accept the full responsibility of being their parent. This means learning our ways, understanding our culture, raising them as Dravic, but with human influence. It means your life will never be normal again. Daniel looked down at Ruby and Cole. They looked up at him with complete trust, complete love. How long do I have to decide? You already decided, Shara said quietly. In that cave, when you wrap them in your jacket instead of walking away, you just need to say it out loud. Before Daniel could respond, alarms blared throughout the colony. Helen grabbed her communicator. Her face went pale. Ice shelf collapse. Section 7. Multiple workers trapped underground. The room erupted in chaos. The officials started coordinating. Helen was shouting orders. Daniel moved toward the door. Wait, one official said. We are not finished here. People are dying, Daniel said. Shara blocked his path. How many trapped? 17, Helen said. The rescue equipment cannot reach them fast enough. The temperature is dropping. They have maybe 4 hours. Shara looked at Ruby and Cole, then at Daniel. Dravic can generate heat. Even hatchlings, they could melt through ice. They are too young, the official protested. It could kill them. Daniel knelt next to Ruby and Cole. He looked into their eyes. Can you help? Can you make fire hot enough to save those people? Ruby chirped, and her scales glowed bright red. Cole rumbled, and heat radiated from his body. They understood. They wanted to help. Daniel stood. We are going. This is reckless, the official said. Shara was already moving. This is what Flamekeepers do. They protect. Come, Daniel Reed. Let us see what you and your hatchlings can accomplish together. The real test was about to begin. The collapsed section looked worse than Daniel expected. Ice and metal twisted together in a chaos of destruction. 17 people were trapped beneath it all. The rescue teams stood around looking helpless. Helen pointed to a schematic on her tablet. They are here, 40 meters down. Standard equipment would take 6 hours to cut through. We do not have 6 hours. Daniel looked at Ruby and Cole. The dragon stood calmly, waiting for his signal. They trusted him completely. That trust felt heavy right now. Shara then knelt next to the hatchlings. She spoke in the Dravic language. Ruby and Cole responded. The conversation was brief. They understand, Shara said. But Daniel, you must know the risk. Hatchlings can produce fire, but sustained heat like this could exhaust them, possibly kill them. I know. You would risk them to save humans. Daniel looked at the collapsed section. 17 people, 17 families. They want to help. I will not stop them, but I will be with them every step. Shara's eyes showed something like respect. Then we begin. The rescue team created a path to the collapse point. Daniel led Ruby and Cole down into the damaged facility. The temperature dropped with every step. Ice coated everything. Here, Helen said, marking a spot. This is the thinnest point. If they can melt through here, we can reach the trapped workers. Ruby stepped forward first. She planted her feet and opened her mouth. Fire erupted. Not the small flames Daniel had seen before. Real fire. Hot and focused. The ice began to melt immediately. Cole joined his sister. His flames were blue-white, even hotter. Together, they created a wall of heat that made everyone step back. The ice melted. Water ran in streams. Beneath the ice was metal. The dragons increased their heat. The metal began to glow red. Daniel watched them carefully. Ruby's scales were bright, almost painful to look at. Cole's breathing was heavy but steady. They were pushing hard. Keep going, Daniel said softly. You can do this. The metal melted. A hole formed. The rescue team rushed forward with equipment. But then a grinding sound echoed through the chamber. Secondary collapse, Helen shouted. Everyone back. The ceiling cracked. Ice fell in huge chunks. The rescue team scattered. Daniel grabbed Ruby and Cole, pulling them away from the collapse. A massive piece of ice crashed where they had been standing. More ice fell. The path they came through was blocked. They were trapped on the wrong side. Daniel's leg burned with pain. He looked down. A piece of metal debris had pierced his calf. Blood spread across his pants. Ruby and Cole saw the blood. They made distressed sounds. Their flames flickered and died as they focused on Daniel. I'm okay, Daniel lied. His leg screamed. We need to keep going. Those people need us. Cole pressed against a blocked path. He tried to melt it, but his flames were weak now. He was tired. Ruby tried to help her brother. Her fire was barely a flicker. They had exhausted themselves. Daniel cursed. This was his fault. He pushed them too hard. From the other side of the collapse, he heard Helen's voice. Daniel, are you alive? Yeah, but we are stuck. The trap workers are just beyond you. Can you reach them? Daniel looked around. There was a gap in the debris. Narrow, but maybe wide enough. He could crawl through. But his leg would not cooperate. Shara's voice came through the comm. Daniel read. Listen to me. The hatchlings are bonded to you. Your pain is their pain. Your determination is their strength. If you give up, they give up. Do you understand? Daniel looked at Ruby and Cole. Both dragons were watching him, waiting for him to tell them what to do. He gritted his teeth and stood. His leg nearly collapsed. Pain shot through his entire body, but he stayed standing. We finished this, he said to the dragons. Together, Ruby's scales brightened. Cole's breathing steadied. They saw Daniel standing despite his pain. They would not be weaker than their flame keeper. Daniel limped toward the gap. Ruby and Cole followed. The gap was too narrow for him, but the dragons were smaller. They could fit. Go, Daniel said. Find the workers. Keep them warm until rescue comes. Ruby hesitated. She did not want to leave Daniel. Go. I will be fine. They need you more. Ruby and Cole looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Then they moved together through the gap. Daniel collapsed against the wall. His leg was bleeding badly now. He pressed his hand against the wound and tried to slow the bleeding. Through the gap, he heard the dragons. Their flames reignited. Not as strong as before, but steady. He heard voices. The trapped workers were alive. That Helen's voice crackled over the comm. We are cutting through from above. Hold on. Time moved strangely. Daniel felt cold. The pain in his leg faded to numbness. That was bad. He knew that was bad. But he could hear Ruby and Cole. Their flames burned. Their presence kept the workers warm. They were doing it. They were saving lives. A sound above him. Cutting equipment. Voices shouting. Light broke through the ceiling. Rescue teams dropped down. They found Daniel first. A medic started working on his leg immediately. More teams pushed through to the trapped workers. All 17 were alive. Cold and scared, but alive. Ruby and Cole sat among them, their scales still glowing with residual heat. They had created a warm pocket that kept everyone from freezing. When the workers were being lifted out, Ruby and Cole refused to leave Daniel. They stayed by his side as the medics treated him. Their scales dimmed now, exhausted. The last thing Daniel remembered before passing out was Ruby's head resting on his chest. Cole's tail wrapped around his arm. They had done it. Together, they had saved everyone. When Daniel woke up, he was in the medical bay. His leg was bandaged and elevated. Ruby and Cole were curled up on the bed next to him, sleeping. Their scales were dull. They looked exhausted, but they were alive. Everyone was alive. Shara stood in the doorway. Behind her, the two council officials watched through the window. Behind them, a crowd of miners had gathered. The entire colony had watched the rescue through the security feeds. Shara approached the bed. She looked at Daniel, at the sleeping dragons, at the bond that had saved 17 lives. You have proven yourself, Flamekeeper. My clan leaders wish to speak with you. Daniel's throat was dry. About what? Shara smiled. About your future. And theirs. You're no longer just a human with baby dragons. You are family. Our family. Daniel's leg healed slowly over the next 2 weeks. Ruby and Cole stayed close the entire time. They had grown again. Ruby was now the size of a horse. Cole was almost as big. They could barely fit in his room anymore. The miners who were trapped came to visit. Every single one. They brought gifts, food, metal scraps for the dragons, words of gratitude. Daniel was not used to people caring about him. It felt strange, but good that on the 15th day, Shara returned with an elderly Dravik. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with silver scales that showed his age. His presence commanded respect. "This is Garrett," Shara said. "He is an elder of our clan. He speaks for our people." Garrett looked at Daniel with eyes that had seen centuries. Then he looked at Ruby and Cole. The hatchlings approached him cautiously. He spoke to them in the Dravik language. They responded with respect, but did not leave Daniel's side. "Interesting," Garrett said in perfect human speech. "They honor me, but they belong to you." "I just helped them," Daniel said. "You did more than help. You became their flame keeper. Do you understand what this means in our culture?" Shara explained some of it. Garrett settled into a chair that creaked under his weight. "A flame keeper is sacred among Dravik, the one who tends a young, the one who keeps the fire alive. In our entire history, this role has only been filled by Dravik. Until you, I did not mean to break any traditions. You did not break them. You expanded them. You showed that the bond between caretaker and young transcends species. This is a gift," Daniel read. The council officials entered the room. They had been waiting outside. One of them spoke. "We have reviewed all data from the rescue. The bond between Daniel and the hatchlings is genuine. It shows unprecedented interspecies cooperation. We recommend this case become a model for future interactions." The other official added, "We are prepared to offer funding for a specialized habitat, a place where both human and Dravik needs can be met." Helen joined them. "The colony is grateful for what you did. All of you. We want you to stay. We will build whatever you need." Daniel looked at all these people making plans. "Does anyone care what I want?" The room went silent. "I want to know if Ruby and Cole get a choice, if they want to stay with me or go with their own kind." Garrett smiled. "Ask them." Daniel looked at Ruby and Cole. They looked back at him with those golden eyes full of intelligence and love. "Do you want to stay with me or go with Garrett and Shara? They can teach you things I cannot, give you things I cannot." Ruby moved first. She pressed her head against Daniel's chest and made a sound he had learned meant always. Cole joined her, wrapping his tail around Daniel's waist. Their answer was clear. "Okay then," Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. "We stay together." Garrett stood. "Then I formally recognize you as flamekeeper of these hatchlings. You are part of our clan now, with all rights and responsibilities." "What does that mean exactly?" Shara explained. "It means you can travel to Dravik worlds, learn our ways. Ruby and Cole will be raised in both cultures, human and Dravik. You will be the bridge between our peoples." The months that followed changed everything. The colony built a special habitat. Part of it was heated for the dragons. Part was comfortable for Daniel. Ruby and Cole thrived. Shara stayed on Frostheim. She taught Daniel the Dravik language, their customs, their history. She became a friend, a true friend. Ben helped design toys for the growing dragons. They needed mental stimulation. Ruby loved puzzles. Cole preferred building things with scrap metal. Other humans started asking questions. Could they bond with non-human species? Could compassion really cross such different biologies? Daniel's story spread beyond Frostheim. Across the galaxy, people heard about the human who saved baby dragons, about the bond that should not exist but did. More Dravik came to visit. Some were skeptical, some were hostile. But when they saw Ruby and Cole, healthy and happy, their attitudes changed. When they saw how Daniel cared for them, how he had learned their language and customs, they began to accept. 1 year after finding the hatchlings in the cave, Daniel stood on an observation platform. Ruby and Cole were no longer babies. They were magnificent young dragons. Their wings could carry them through Frostheim's cold skies. Their flames could melt solid ice, but they still slept next to Daniel every night, still followed him everywhere, still looked at him like he was their whole world. Shara joined him on the platform. "The clan elders are impressed. They want to send more young ones to learn from humans. Cultural exchange. That is a big step. You made it possible. You proved that different species can be family." Daniel watched Ruby and Cole playing in the snow. They were wrestling, careful not to hurt each other. Their scales gleamed in the pale sunlight. I came to this moon to be alone, Daniel said, to escape everything. And instead you found everything. Sheriff finished. A distress call came through the comm system. A cargo ship crashed in the northern ice fields. Crew members were trapped. Daniel did not hesitate. Ruby, Cole, we have work to do. The dragon stopped playing and flew to him immediately. They had done this many times now. Rescue missions, saving lives. Together, they prepared to leave. Daniel thought about that stormy year ago. The moment he heard whimpering in a dark cave. The choice he made to care instead of walk away. That choice changed his life. It changed Ruby and Cole's lives. It was changing how different species saw each other across the galaxy. All because one human decided that two baby dragons mattered. Ruby nuzzled his shoulder. Cole rumbled his version of a laugh. They were ready. Daniel climbed onto Ruby's back. Cole flew beside them. Together, they launched into the cold sky of Frostheim. Below them, the colony watched. The human and his dragons. A family that should not exist, but they did exist. And they were proof that family was not about being the same species. Family was about choice, about commitment, about showing up when someone needed you. Daniel had shown up in that cave. Ruby and Cole had chosen him. Now they faced the galaxy together. The ice moon glittered beneath them. No longer a place of exile. Now it was home. Ruby roared, announcing their presence to anyone who needed help. Cole echoed her call, and Daniel, the first human flamekeeper in galactic history, smiled. This was where he belonged. This was who he was meant to be, not alone anymore. Never alone again. Just a human and his dragons, saving lives and building bridges across the stars. Exactly as it should be.